ready to talk hockey. Streaming from the Oilers Live studio. Subscribe or follow today.
Hey, it's Michael here from Oilers Live for another Oilers Live Thursday with myself and Mr. Mike Dursa. Hey, Mike.
Hello, Mike.
How's it going? You know what? This is a new thing for me. I just realized I didn't hear the intro tonight, so I'm hoping that everybody got the beautiful intro music. Otherwise, we're just a couple of boring guys talking in to a microphone. Not that it's not that way all the time, but geez, I'd like to think that part of what makes this show exciting is the intro. That's what people come for, that fancy intro that I had made.
That's why we pay the big bucks.
That's right. That's where the big bucks come from. So we've had a little bit of a scheduling change. We were going to have Mr. Luke Lipinski from Arizona on tonight. He's a broadcaster out of Arizona. He does some of the sports for the Coyotes in Canada, or the Coyotes if you're in the U.S. But I think they're known affectionately as the Coyotes. Anyway, he's not going to be able to make it tonight. We've got a couple of people that may or may not fill in. We'll see. Otherwise, for the most part, everybody's just kind of stuck with us while we talk about Edmonton being this great hub of private golf courses and big screen movie houses and that for players. Did you hear the latest on the Hub City proposal?
Yeah, I kind of been listening to Rashog in the morning like I usually do, and yeah, they're definitely trying to get Edmonton to host some games. And there's talk of the Oilers not even being able to play at home, being sent out to a different city, so they don't have really an advantage. I'm not sure really how much home ice advantage you're going to have if there's not going to be any fans in the stands, but it's kind of interesting. I mean, Edmonton's doing really well with keeping the numbers down in terms of people infected by coronavirus, and Alberta's doing really well with testing, and I think it's probably an attractive market to be in that way. And just the Rogers Place being a state-of-the-art facility. There's two arenas inside that one building. The hotel is the Marriott is attached to it. So I think it's really well set up to be able to do this sort of thing. I think the hurdle they're up against is kind of, there's this idea where teams have to, players have to go back to wherever it is their home city is, quarantine there for 2 weeks, and then if they come into Canada, they're supposed to quarantine for 2 weeks. So I don't know what kind of hoops and stuff they're going to jump through to that might be the thing that is a bit of a hang up.
Yeah, I'm a little bit I haven't heard this about Edmonton not being able to play at home. I know that there's been a big deal made out of trying to keep it fair, which I don't really get.
That's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. To me that doesn't. If we're all, if nobody's going to be allowed to be at the game, then
right.
Then it doesn't. To me, there's other than the bounces of your home arena.
I just don't think that's a big deal anymore. I think most NHL rinks are kind of all the same.
Not to mention, over the last 14 years, it's done us a whole lot of good, right? Yeah.
The one thing about a place like Edmonton, in July, if we're playing in July and August, a really warm day in Edmonton is going to be around 30 degrees. Well, that's going to be hard to find a 30-degree day in a place like Vegas. So as well as I do, when it gets into the mid 20s to low 30s, ice conditions in most buildings go right down into the toilet. And so you crank that up another 10 degrees, you got 40-degree weather outside. Good luck having ice that, is fast and you have a good product to watch. It becomes mush and it's not much fun to watch. So I think, in that aspect, Edmonton is probably better than anywhere. Maybe Winnipeg would be kind of along the same lines, but
Well,
it's kind
I'm
of,
not even thinking so much about the ice, but if at first when I thought about it, I thought, wow, Vegas, I bet you the players would be all over that. I mean, you are, you've got everything. They talked about shutting down a whole resort. I mean, you can have whatever you want, right? Like I'm sure they'd set up some tables if the players want to play some
yeah,
games or whatever. Like they would, they could do it up. But then here's the thing. I mean, if you've spent, and I've spent one time, I went there, just on a personal trip for 3 or 4 days, and then I did a conference right after for another 5 days. So I think I was there, total of 9 days, 8 nights, 9 days sort of deal. And I can tell you, after 5 days, I was, I couldn't stand it anymore. Like, there's only so much. I mean, you can't. It's so hot, right? Which it will be if they play this. It's so hot, and you're going to be outside. Like you can't really spend too much time outside, right? And you don't want to be inside for how long is this going to take? Like you got to figure they're going to be holed up for a couple weeks at max or at minimum, right? I'm not sure that's kind of the place that I want to be when I think about it. I mean, at first it seemed like a really great idea. I'm thinking about all of the amenities that you could have. But they're right. I mean, they're right to talk about the weather and talk about those things that Edmonton has in the summer. It's a nice climate in the summer, right? And the evenings are warm still, right? So you can do that. Have an outdoor movie theater or whatever they're talking about. I think it's. I think Edmonton's got to be in one of the leading spots to take that hub city role. It's just too bad if that's accurate, and I'm not sure we know, but if it's accurate that they're talking about not playing in Edmonton, then it's too
it's
bad.
just been thrown out there. But um, I don't know if the Edmonton Oilers, as an organization, they're putting a lot of effort into trying to make this happen. So I don't really see them as to saying, "Well, you're going to send our team away when we're doing all this work for the NHL." I, the Jason Strudwick brought it up. Really, the only really advantage they're going to have through something like this is their dressing room. Their dressing room is pretty fantastic. Um, and but like he said, the away dressing rooms are nicer than most other teams' home dressing rooms too. So, and if that's your only advantage when you drop the puck, that's gone. I mean, it's an
Well,
amenity and a luxury, but
yeah,
as an
maybe you
advantage to winning a hockey game or Game 7 of the Stanley Cup, your dressing room doesn't win you games.
and maybe you put them in an away room, right? Like there's got to be more than two rooms there, I would assume.
I would
Maybe,
assume too,
yeah,
but I don't know for sure.
maybe you shut down the home dressing room. I guess the advantage and none of the players, like you keep the players all in the same place, right? Like they're maybe you don't allow them to go home, right? Like they're under the same conditions that anybody else that's playing. They have to stay at the hotel. They have to do all of
Right.
those things, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that may be the case anyway. I mean, they're trying to create an NHL bubble, so yeah.
Yeah. I think when I consider some of the alternatives that are out there, I think just given the arena, the proximity of the hotel, some of the other things that we talked about, the fact that Edmonton is having a good look at some of the amenities like golfing and that it's. Bob says if it's in the name of fairness, he doesn't see a big deal of the Oilers not playing at home. I guess. I mean, yeah, you're right. I'd be happy just to watch the Oilers play, whether they're
Okay.
playing here or
Here's something though. I mean, if you make the Oilers play their games at the community rink, Do they still have home ice advantage anymore?
Well, yeah. Yeah, does anybody?
Right. I
I
mean, they've skated on there, yeah, more than other teams, but it's not Rogers Place. I
if
mean,
it's a
so
deal breaker though, then let them play someplace else.
right.
Right. The truth is it really, it really doesn't matter if they play in Edmonton or not because we're not going to be able to go to the game.
No.
Yeah, I think it's good for the city. Like I think it's kind of like a nice, like a. I think that it's good. It's a good showcase. It's like having, not at that level, but it's like having the Olympics in your city. You can,
Yeah.
you can do the pan shots of the city skyline, and you can every time you go on air for playoff hockey, the names repeated over and over and over again, and I think that's good branding for a city. And so I think, from a city perspective, that's great. But the reality is we're not going to be able to talk to these players. We're not going to be able to see them. We're not going to be able to buy tickets to go watch them. What we do get, and I'm all for, is playoff hockey. So if they play that in Vegas or they play that in New York or wherever, then I'm all for it. Let's get some hockey going, and soon. Like it's got to happen right away. Like as soon as possible, right?
Yeah. No, I think we're probably a month away.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they need to do it sort of as quick as they can because you got to have some space between playoffs and regular season starting again. They're the regular season's going to be delayed, obviously, right? But yeah, I think that there's got to be some time. And I think right now, right, like they're still looking at, July timeframe anyway, right?
Yeah. No, I heard Brian Burke today on Oilers Now and was offering that. Yeah, instead of like August, September, you're probably looking at mid June. Things start happening here.
So you and I have been going solo tonight for all of 15 minutes, and already we've got a comment on Facebook asking when our next guest is going to be on. Wow, we're quite popular. So this one is somebody who I know is related to you, Miss Lori Jean, and she's asking, "Are you having the big man on Monday?" And Mike, go ahead. What's the announcement for Monday?
Well, that is apparently what is going to go down. Although yesterday, you know, I guess my phone number got relayed to George Larac by the miracles of the internet, and he was supposed to give me a call, and that didn't happen. So I'll reach out to him. You know, if I don't hear from him tomorrow over the weekend, and we'll see what goes on. But yeah, I'm hoping we'll have George Larac on Monday.
Yeah. So as I said, I do have his number from a previous time. I could always we could always give him a ring. We could have him on tonight. We could have him on in 5 minutes, but he just wouldn't know.
Stay tuned.
Yeah. We just won't tell him. Hey, George. There we go.
Hey now.
Yeah. So I believe that's your sister. Is that right?
That would be my sissy. Yeah.
Yeah. So to your sister, thanks for tuning in and watching. I know you're not coming to watch for me. You're watching for Mr. Dursa himself.
I hope not.
And anyway, yeah, hopefully we got Mr. George Larac on for Monday night, which I think would be good. Let's talk about this. Because the reason you reached out to George was to talk about Akeem Alou's comments on the Players Tribune. Pretty big deal, right? Like that he would come out, and I think the biggest deal there is that he called out Steve Downey, right? Like, I mean, it's not, it's one thing to call out a culture in hockey, which I think, whether we care to admit it or not, exists and still exists. Maybe I don't know if, I've got nothing to say it's any worse now or any better now. But to call out one player, that's a pretty big deal. Did you read the full article?
I got into reading that, and I'm going through it, and he's talking about the liquid heat and the jock and that kind of stuff, and the first little bit, I'm like, yeah, that could happen to anybody, and it does happen to rookies in our day. you know I think things are probably different that way now, but when I was growing up, that was common. Rookies got liquid heat when they'd go into the shower or something. They come out and you know burns and all of that stuff, and you know I'll name drop, but Kill 'em Wheat Kings used to make rookies run behind the bus naked when they were on road trips, for half a mile, that kind of stuff. That happened. But when he talked about Downey, basically targeting him, sticking him in the mouth just because he's a different skin pigment, that bothered me, and that got right to me. And I thought that article was fabulously written, and yeah, it was hard. It moved me, and as soon as I got through that, I reached out to George, and it was probably within a half an hour. George says, "Yeah, I'll do it." So I'm looking forward to that. So hopefully we can get in touch with him again, and it goes down. But yeah, no, that I didn't see much of that in my minor hockey career at all. And if Chad was on tonight, he could tell you we coached together a young, pretty good hockey player who was native. That I don't think we tried to be cognizant of what he was going through, because you're leery of that kind of stuff, and I don't think that he faced that. And he liked Chad enough that his dad actually asked Chad to coach him at kind of the how they have sort of the native games.
Yeah, they've got the
Or indigenous games.
games.
Chad did a pretty good job with his son and was asked to coach that. So we saw it firsthand, and it's delicate. The thing, I gotta say this, the thing that really bothered me when Akeem Alou first kind of came out about the Bill Peters stuff is a lot of people took the attitude, and I saw it all over the place, and I got to call it out because I think I have to. Is that the only reason you're hearing this is because he was a fringe player? And after you read that article, it's like, that's irrelevant. The guy went through hell, and there's no place for that. Like, that needs to go. The days of the Archie Bunker kind of comedy is not funny anymore. It never really was funny, but it's got to be gone. Like, let's get rid of that. NHL has, and he brought it up too. There's an irony in the hockey is for everyone. Well, if it's for everyone, then it should be for everyone. Get rid of this guy because he's a different color than me. It's just such bullshit, Mike, and it angers me. It makes me sad at the same time, but it really fuels rage in me. Like, that's the one thing that I probably can't stand more than anything in this life is hating somebody just because they're a little different. They speak a little different. Oh, so you have a little trouble understanding what they're trying to say. Well, how easy is it for them? I mean, the guy's trying to speak a language he doesn't know yet, and your ignorance gets in the way of him trying to communicate with you because it's hard for you to understand him. Come on, that's it makes me sick.
Well, you're 100% right to be to be angry about it, and I can tell you this, and I've talked about it before. I'm 50% Cree. My mother was full Cree, and she grew up on the reserve, just outside of Saddle Lake, or just outside of St. Paul in Saddle Lake, and so she, I've spent a lot of time out there, and I can tell you, like, if you look at me, I mean, if it's funny because if I go out to Saddle Lake or anywhere, if I was at Alexis or any of the First Nations around Alberta or whatever, typically people ask what reserve I'm from. I don't know how they know, but if I'm outside of the reserve or off reserve, nobody looks at me. They don't, when they find out, they're, a lot of times they're quite surprised. And quite typically, um, what happens is I'll be and I see this. I see it still to this day, and it's every year, every dressing room I've been in. Assuming that everybody's Caucasian in the room, right, or looks white. The racist comments will fly, and I play a lot of hockey, so I've seen it. It's unfortunate. It happens. It's there. I'll typically say something, and some people have commented. I put a tweet out, and some people commented to say, "Hey, I've experienced that too." And when they realize, "Hey, that's your heritage or that's your family," and the way I think about it, if you insult, First Nations people or Cree people or anyone for that matter, that's my mother you're talking about, and that's my family. And so, I've seen that over and over again. I don't know if somebody asked me the question, is it hockey related or is it everywhere? I don't know if it's just hockey related, but it's happening in hockey. And so we need to, as a group, whether there are Indigenous people in the dressing room or not, it's important for everybody to speak up. Whether there's anybody of any difference or minority, right? If it's LGBTQ, right? Like it doesn't matter, right? Like we can't, they've thankfully, and we get Brett on the show, every week. They've thankfully taken all the homophobic slurs out of hockey. That it's a penalty. In fact, it's an automatic suspension, right? They've taken out all of these things. But the reality is we don't want that associated with our game, right? Like this is a game that we take a lot of pride in Canada, and and we're trying to say it's for everybody, and it should be for everyone. And there's a team in the WHL that didn't have a single Indigenous player on the team for a number of years, and they just finally had their first player, and this is CHL. If you have been out to watch, at the Indigenous games or wherever, watch the hockey that's being played, there are a lot of great hockey players that aren't that haven't been, I don't think got their due in the world of hockey, given their background, and it's too bad. I would like to think, guys like Ethan Bear, who, we celebrate and enjoy watching play. I think that, they can change that perception, right?
You bring up his name. Do you remember? I think it was last year or the year before. He was close to making the team then.
Yeah.
And there was a guy that went off on him, and just disgusting. Like I don't need to see that stuff. I hope, Mike, there comes a day when you don't have to announce to me that you're 50% Cree and so is of color, or we're human beings. Like all that, I'm Scottish, British, Irish, Portuguese, Lithuanian. I'm a person, like I think that's a part of the ugliness. Like we shouldn't have to announce our heritage. We're people. You know what I mean? If that doesn't mean you don't have to be proud of where you came from and your family history and all that, but you shouldn't have to go through this checklist just to belong.
Yeah,
That's
no,
what's wrong.
yeah, it's 100%. I think that I'm glad that the Kimalu, and we'll move on from this, but I'm glad that he called it out. It's a conversation that needs to happen every year until it's not happening, right? And for those that listen now or listen later, I just I think that what you got to do is when you're in that dressing room, or anywhere in life for that matter. It's not just confined to hockey. And somebody says something, you have to stand up and say, "Look, that's just not acceptable,"
You,
and
you
don't
know
be
the
silent.
you know you know the part of that whole thing that bothered me more than anything is I kind of put myself in his shoes, and I felt really alone because he was on an island. Like nobody stood up for him. It was up to him to stand up for himself. I'm glad he did. I'm glad he fought and he wouldn't accept it and wouldn't take it. But he was all on his own. And you're supposed to be a team. Hockey team is supposed to be a family. Well, that was a pretty dysfunctional family he belonged to, and.
Yeah, and that's it's easier said than done, but you have to. It's got to start somewhere, and somebody's got to step up, and it can't be the guys like Akeem Alou that step up because it's happening to them, right? It needs to be somebody else, and you need to talk about it, and you need to say that's not right, and I don't accept that. And when people start doing that, it's gonna get out there. Where the fact that homophobic or racist slurs in hockey are now penalized in rec leagues in Hockey Canada, and
It's a huge step.
it is a huge step. And so, I love hockey, right? Like that. Sure, that part of it can go. Um, but I think that there's a lot of wonderful people that play hockey, yourself and a whole bunch of people. Um, we just need to work together on it, and that's all I'm going to say. I think it's great. We'll have hopefully George gives you a call and we can schedule him in on Monday, and we can talk to him about his experience. I mean, he's of Haitian descent, and he's got a cousin, I think, that played one or two games in the NHL as well. He can talk about what he's gone through. From my perspective, while I felt the hurt because it was, insults. It's been insults against my family, and I've seen what my mom went through, with residential school and then beyond that, and some of that. Um, but nothing was ever, just because of the way I look. It's never directed at me, and so I can't. I can only imagine, and that's all I can do is only imagine. And so, to hear from George on Monday and get a firsthand, because I guarantee that he's heard it. I guarantee he's been called all sorts of names. I guarantee, and while it's great that he's overcome that, in fact, my mother overcame a lot to get where she ended up. Like, when she was, 9, 10 years old, she would get beaten for speaking Cree, at school, and she overcame that and had a very successful life later on. But not everybody's so lucky, and I wouldn't call people weak for doing that. Like there's a very small group of people that can get through that without permanent emotional scarring that will forever keep them in the doldrums of life and
Yeah,
just
or become jaded,
yeah.
really jaded.
Yeah, exactly, 100%. Anyway, so let's table this conversation until Monday. We'll have George on. Maybe we'll talk about this, and we can talk about some other things with George. Of course, he embodies the once an Oiler, always an Oiler mentality. In fact, he's on radio in Montreal, and I think
Yeah.
quite regularly gets in trouble for his support of the Edmonton Oilers. And if you recall, he showed up in 2017. He showed up at the Oilers' first playoff game because he told everybody he would when they get back to the playoffs, right? You gotta love George. He's loved by most people that are Oilers fans. Be excited to have a chat with him. Have you seen him lately? By the way.
I seen him. I think 2 years ago. Him and Strudwick and Dean McCammond were signing autographs
Oh
at
yeah, we were talking
our
about this.
our Ernie's here.
He is a monster,
Oh,
right?
he's a
Like
big man.
he is a big man. Yeah, man, he's something else. Interesting thing about George is that it's hard to find him without a smile on his face. Right, like
Yeah.
he might be one of the happiest men imaginable.
But you know what?
Yeah.
The day I saw him, you would have thought he was playing Game 7. Like the intensity out of him, he was mad we weren't a playoff team.
Oh yeah, yeah. I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised. I like George, hell of a guy, and be great to have him on. Thanks for reaching out to him. That'll be exciting. It's your Megathread Monday, so you picked the right day, of course. Oh, that is really cool. So I'm just checking out Twitter right now, and I don't know if this this person is actually listening in today, but said
We have a caller.
no callers, no callers today. This Tasha said her uncle was assisted Wayne's first professional goal. That would be pretty darn cool. I would love to have that in my history. Dave Morrow is the fellow's name. We'll have to Bob check that out because I'd love to confirm that. That would be pretty damn cool. And what she was commenting on is I'm sitting down. I'm a big Jeopardy nerd, and I'm watching Jeopardy, and the question or the answer comes on, which is the NHL got a great deal when this team, an 18-year-old Wayne Gretzky, moved over from the WHA in 1979. And the guy, I can't remember which one it was, but the guy that answered it, I just remembered. He goes, "What is Edmonton Oilers?" Right? Like I was speaking a whole different language. Really enjoyed that. And then following that, a couple of things later, they were talking about British Columbia and said this province directly to the east of British Columbia. And somebody says, "What is Manitoba?" and then, and that was, and nobody got it that it was Alberta. So they know Edmonton, but they don't know Alberta. And what though that tells me, which is something we've always known, and when you talk about the Oilers, is the Oilers have done a wonderful job of putting Edmonton on the map, and we talked about that with this hub city. I always, when I travel, and I travel across North America quite a bit, not in the last 2 months, people know Edmonton, but they know it because of the Oilers, typically, right? And they also know that it's cold. So it's good. I love our hockey team. Big Oilers fan. Might even do a podcast about it one day.
One day
Maybe,
when we grow up.
yeah,
Yeah.
when we grow up, maybe I will start a podcast that people will call into that aren't spam. No spam work callers. Bob says just a matter of time before you guys are trending. Thanks, Bob.
Yeah.
Yeah, 4 people might help us trend. No, we've actually been doing all right. We've been getting. I get a lot of comments. I get a lot of people that I don't know because I don't always think I know exactly how many people are watching at one time. So quite often I will get comments or messages from people that I didn't see were watching, and they're not commenting, so I don't know that they're watching necessarily. But thank you to everybody that tunes in, especially Bob, who's been fantastic as a stats man, and also kind of a jerk sometimes when he proves to me that I'm wrong. Or you. I mean, he's fact checked you once or twice. Mostly me. He's mostly fact checking me and saying, I don't think that's accurate. here's what really happened.
Uh,
What shirt you wearing today, by the way?
I'm wearing a Paul Coffey jersey here.
Nice, Mr. Paul Coffey. I got the Mark Messier on. Well,
There you go.
you got a few hearts for that. A few hearts for Paul Coffey.
Oh, just from you, eh?
Yeah, yeah. He was all right. Paul Coffey was all right.
Yeah, he did okay.
So, what do you like? We're all stuck inside. We're sort of stuck inside. Not stuck inside, but we're not watching hockey. Like, what do you miss the most? Is it hockey? Like, what's do is it the because we go through the off season all the time, right? I know, the fact is, even when the off season's on, I'm like the whole time, I just can't wait till October hits, right? Like, and it's like the new regular season. They start talking, July 1st, you get a little bit of a taste, when free agency happens. And then, there's just enough, right? Like to, whet your appetite. And then, September just can't come close enough. Preseason starts and you're pretty excited that preseason's here and you get right into it. And then you realize like I do every year. And I don't know if you're like me, but I'm like, can't wait for preseason. Then preseason starts and I'm like, oh shit, preseason's boring as like, it's awful. Right. And then I spend the next week to 2 weeks. I think it's about 2 weeks now, waiting for the regular season to start. Bob said 17-year-old Gretzky scored as an indie pacer. I remember that, assisted by Kevin Morrison. And so that is Tasha Morrison's uncle. And you can find Tasha on Twitter at Tasha Jolene. But she is a Leafs fan, so be forewarned. Be forewarned.
We all have our downfalls.
That's right. So Tasha, if you're tuning in, we've just talked about you, and sorry to hear about the Leafs. They are fast approaching 20,000 days since they've last won a cup.
Something's catastrophic's going to happen. You know why?
Why is that?
Because there's a pretty high probability that the Leafs are going to be playing hockey in June, and that's just unheard of.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe that's the conspiracy. that is. I hadn't considered that. Hockey in June for Toronto. That's when has that happened last? I bet you Bob could probably fact check that too, but it's been a long time. What's interesting is all of the
Bill Barilko.
all of the time. Like this is the time when the Stanley Cup would be awarded right now, right? Like this is when around this date, right? We'd be watching near the end of the cup. Just 2 days ago, I think, was the anniversary of the Oilers' first cup. And, last year, I'm going to look it up. 2019. We'll see. June 12th last year. So we're approaching, approaching
third round, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. And St. Louis. Wow. Hey, hard to believe St. Louis won a cup. That was pretty good. I actually, June of last year seems pretty much like forever ago now.
That was, 10 years ago.
Yeah, yeah, it feels like 10 years ago. It was a whole decade ago.
Yeah. When did we do the Oilerslive Cup? Was that in March?
February 29th, leap year.
Right. Doesn't it seem like, like 5 years ago?
It does seem like 5 years ago. It seems like a distant memory. And it's not really. I mean, it was, March, April, and then 2.5 months ago.
Yeah.
Almost 3 months. Here's what I'm thinking, by the way. And why not announce it here? But I am thinking that as soon as ice is available, I am booking it. and we're gonna, whether it's big or small or whatever size, we're gonna get out there and we're gonna skate. And if we donate a couple dollars to Heart and Stroke, which is our charity of choice, I think that's great. But at the very least, I want the Twitter folks, Oilers fans, and whatever other fans, except for maybe the Flames fans, out there, and we'll get out and play some hockey and have actually even Flames fans can be there. They're just not allowed to wear their jerseys.
Are there any?
Yeah, they have. They have
Not
been.
here, probably.
They have been very quiet as of late.
We
It's
might we might even let a Sabres fan come.
It has been a bit of a
Hi, Jeff.
rundown memory. Yeah, Jeff, we'll let Jeff go. It's been a bit of a rundown memory lane, though, now that we've been without hockey and all of these reviews in history games. It's been kind of neat. And it makes me, when you talk about that, the Flames can talk about, the one year that they won. But they right, like they just, it is, I guess it is what it is, right? Like it's kind of neat being an Oilers fan because we can go through this and we have cups to talk about. Whoa, did you know Jeff was listening in?
I did.
Oh man. All right. Well, welcome. Hey, Stats Guy Bob says the latest the NHL has ever played is June 24th, and it happened in 1995 and 2013. That's crazy. June, like end of June. Like we should be. I mean, you're at the lake watching hockey, right?
Yeah.
That's unreal. That is unreal. So we've got a guest that we can add in. Is that right?
Probably.
All right. All right. Let me see what we can do here. Hold on, everybody. This is how we do things on the fly here at Oilers Live. We can pretty much do anything we want, anytime we want. And hold on, I'm gonna see what we can do here. And then
Probably.
all right. Let me. You got to put us on mute, though. Hold on, everybody. This is how we do things on the fly here. Now he's got it. He's listening to us. Pretty much do anything and he's online. I'm muting you here. You there, Chad?
Yes, sir.
All right. All right. How many beers in? Do we got video?
Hold tight. I'm scared to show you.
This is live streamed right now, by the way. This is like people are listening to you.
Oh.
What kind of rinky-dink sort of system do you think we're running here? This is like people.
I was watching a rerun of America's Got Talent with my wife.
Oh
and
no!
passed out on the couch.
All right. And wow. So I mean, you took yourself away from America's Got Talent to talk to us.
Well, I kind of figured this is more important after the news that's going around the league. It's pretty exciting stuff. So
yeah, well, for sure. Well, thanks for joining us. I'm gonna give you your own picture and everything. Just hold on. Let's. There you go. You are being streamed live. Everybody's with you. Bob, we got a goalie on.
Bobby,
we got a goalie on. So, how's it going?
Good. How are you guys doing?
Good. We were just what were we talking about? We were talking. Bob says the latest the NHL has ever played is June 24th. Happened in 1995 and 2013. I was saying that's unreal. Like to think.
Yeah, we'd be right in the third round or so right now.
Yeah.
Hey, there is some hockey news. What do you guys think of this 3-on-3 league that's starting out? I mean, it's gimmicky, right? But they've got some guys. They got I don't know if you guys have you heard of it. First off, did you know about
No.
this? Okay, so I think it's going to be called 3 Ice or something. It's a 3-on-3 league. They've got Grant Fear is going to be coaching a team. Carbonneau. They've got like 6 Hall of Famers. I think they've got 9 teams lined up. So it's going to be 3-on-3 hockey. I don't know if they are if they're going to be playing like the travel or not. I assume they're going to be doing some travel. 7 guys on the bench, right? I assume they're. Let's hope that there's some fisticuffs and it goes back to old school, old time hockey, right? A little bit of Eddie Shore.
Well, I actually haven't heard of this. So what are they hoping to get from this? Like starting when and what are they looking for other than some fun for everybody to watch a game?
Yeah, so I suspect that it was in the works prior to everybody going indoors, right? You can't, you're not going to push something like this through. I don't actually know what the 3-on-3 has become a big thing for the street hockey, right? Like these 3-on-3 tournaments, it's everywhere. The ball hockey. I don't know that it's been a big deal anywhere else, but it'd be interesting. I mean, they're hoping for some star appeal with Carbonneau and Fear, and I can't remember the other names. I don't even know what the I don't even know what the teams are going to be. So they do have at 3ice.com. So if you go to the website 3ice.com and you go straight to the coaches, they are hoping for the star appeal. They've got Guy Carbonneau, Grant Fear, Ed Johnston. Wow. John LeClaire, haven't seen that guy in a while. I actually really like John LeClaire as a player. Joe Mullen, Larry Murphy.
Oh, Joey.
Yeah. Angela Ruggiero. So she's an Olympic medalist. Brian, Trache. I like Trache too. He's only won 7 times the Stanley Cup. No big deal, as they say. No big deal. So would you watch something? I mean, are you a traditionalist? Is this the kind of thing where you spit at the TV and say hockey's meant to be played 5-on-5, or would you watch some 3-on-3 hockey?
No, I mean, it's pretty exciting just watching the guys even do 3-on-3 at the All-Star game. So I think it'd be a lot of fun. I'm curious as to like what level of hockey players they'll have. It has merit to being interesting for sure.
Yeah, they're going for a little bit of star talent, and Bob says 20 games guaranteed, weekdays only. So Bob also though has obviously been drinking because he said you can have your Big George, but I'll take goalie Chad episode any day. So Bob, if you need help, just say something.
Yeah. Maybe Chad's budget's a little bigger than ours. I don't know.
He's drinking the pure Smirnoff over there, Chad is. I see. Straight up. Nothing. Oh, a Smirnoff Oilers glass.
You betcha.
Wow.
That looks like a Lepard 2-finger shot glass there, Chad. Kind of scared.
That's not straight up. If it was straight up, I'd be laying on the floor right now.
Well, you were earlier, so maybe it's your second win.
Maybe it's my second one. Where's Bob? I think we need Bob to phone in. We need to bash the centerman and bash the defenseman.
All right. Well, we could have a Bob if you're listening. I think you know the number. We had a little bit of a spam caller problem the other day. Were you listening, Chad? When we had when all of Mike Durst's friends were calling in, and
we had a little Stern Tradio going on.
Oh man,
Luchansky's got friends like Richard Christie and all the Stern Show cast.
Yeah.
So anyway, Bob, if you're around, you know the number, and if you don't know the number, then please do just send me a note and I will put you on. All right. Let's what's your thought on this? I know that you were listening, Chad, fully and
Yep.
intently to the first part of the program. And so you know that we talked about the 24 game, the Hub City proposals that are out there.
Yep.
Do you care? Do you even care
Yeah,
if hockey comes back? Like, what's your thought?
Yeah. As far as I'm concerned, I thought we had a real shot at doing something this year, so it was super disappointing if I was an Oilers fan. But I mean, as far as the Hub City thing goes, I think we have the best case of having a team come here, being as we are set up the best as far as I'm concerned with the state-of-the-art rink and the 5-star hotel that's attached to it. It's a pretty good situation for players to come in of large amounts and stay safe and follow the rules and everything else. But do I want to see hockey again? Of course I want to see hockey again. If I didn't, then I wouldn't be a hockey fan.
What do you have a secondary team, by the way, after the Oilers that you cheer for?
There's other teams?
Nice. That's the right answer. That is the right answer. All right.
He's full of shit. I think he likes the Penguins.
Hey,
I like a
I'm
couple
a
of
Pens
them.
fan too.
Yeah, I might be a closet Sid fan.
Yeah. Well, there are definitely worse people to cheer for.
He's come out of the closet before because I knew.
Yeah.
He is a hell of a hockey player. I was watching on Twitter. I got what's that guy? He does PDO hockey. Filipovich, is that his name? Dmitry Filipovich. Does that sound right? Well, he's got a slightly bigger following than we've got here.
What?
I know. Hey, I have heard that he sometimes get tens of people watching his podcast. I'm not.
Hey, we've peaked at 25. So
We did peak at 25. Anyway, so Dmitry Filipovich put up a little clip montage of Rick Nash. And Rick
cool.
Nash probably scored one of the most beautiful goals that I've ever seen. You know, the one, there's two defensemen. He doesn't split the defensemen. He just kind of like uses them as pylons and then kicks the puck to his stick and shoves it in the net. Might be one of my favorite goals ever. But then I'm watching through the montage and I forgot how much I love Rick Nash.
Yeah.
Like that guy, he's a giant.
That almost sounded like a Lemieux move right out of his playbook.
Well, it was absolutely a Lemieux move, but like, I think I don't think we've ever mentioned the name Rick Nash on this show, and you kind of forget. I mean, he had kind of, the way he went out, like the way he's gone out of the game, right? Like it's just too bad. You gotta. I think that sometimes, as a player or anything, like it's hard to go kind of leave the game when you're not at your peak, right? Like Gretzky left, he probably still could have, he could have done another 2,000 points, right? But he left when he's at his peak, right? Or, well, before he, goes away from that, right? Rick Nash, I'm not quite sure you could say that about him. Oh, geez. We got Bob is waiting. He's sending me a message to say pick up the bloody phone.
Goalies are so impatient.
Yeah, wow. Sick of listening to hold music. Bastard, you're on.
Hey, gentlemen.
Bobby!
Yeah, you got the wrong show. Gentlemen. Sorry, wrong number.
Yeah, it's a reach.
Wrong number. How you doing?
Oh, did I get the wrong number?
That's right. Yeah, you got the wrong number. Who is this? Who is this and why are you calling? How you doing, Bob?
What are your thoughts on all this, Bob? The 24 teams and the trying to get through some semblance of a playoff.
Holy shit! The guy's been on my show twice, and now he's starting to ask questions.
I thought this was the Chad show now. I thought it was the Chad show now. That's why I was calling in.
Man, this is like Goalies Live right here. You know what? You guys, go ahead. Take it away. I'm putting myself
the best
on
radio you can subscribe to.
I'm putting myself on mute. Go ahead, Chad. You start asking the questions. Durst and I are going to see how it's done.
I need more beer.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So, Chad, it's your first interview on the Oilers Live channel, and he's just asked Bob, the goalie, I might add, Bob, the goalie, what he thinks of the 24 team setup here, Hub City setup. Go ahead.
I'm not against it at all. It's not the first time that the playoff format has been dicked around with. I see a lot of people online. They're complaining about how it's not the true playoffs. It's not the way it's usually done. Well, you know what? The format has been changed throughout the whole history. I think the worst part would be when they initially expanded in 1967, and they actually put all the expansion teams in one conference. So that meant that an expansion team automatically made the final. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, all the expansion teams finished below 500 that year. That'd be a bigger travesty than what they're doing now.
I totally agree. So do you think Edmonton's a good spot to hold one of those, or be a hub city?
I don't care where they hold it. It's as good a spot as any. I mean, it makes sense because of the venue, 2 ice services, and you got stuff attached to it. I can see the draw for Vegas, with the they could keep things secluded there, rent a resort or what have you. But I also see like maybe California or Florida where the rinks are kind of in close proximity, so they can shuffle teams around those rinks as well. But I really don't care where. It could be up in Greenland for all I care. Let's just have some hockey.
You know what comes into my mind though is if you go to Florida, if you go to Vegas, and you're playing for the Stanley Cup, the last week of July, first part of August, you got 40-degree weather. Good luck having ice that is resemblance of ice. Like the game's gonna slow down. We've all played on mush ice. It's not the same game. No, but
here's the thing. I heard you say that. I heard you say that there earlier, and I don't disagree with that. But let's face it, like I said, but the games go into June already. It's getting hot out in these desert areas, and a lot of these southern states places, the ice is shit anyways. Yeah. And in the end, both teams are playing on the same surface, so the better team was still going to win that game.
You water down your product even more is kind of what my thought process is.
So if they take the playoffs into July, August, just what the sound is going to be into the end of August is when it'll be done-ish, that pretty puts a big kibosh on guys in training camp starting the next season if this thing actually lifts up, right? What do you think about that? Are these guys in good enough shape that they can just carry on in the next season?
I think this is one of those this is an exception. This isn't the norm. This isn't something like I have my doubts that we're going to have a pandemic every year. So this is what it is, and these guys are professionals. This is what they get paid to do. So if that means you have, a 1 week or a 2 week summer break after this, then so be it. You're getting paid millions of dollars to play hockey. This is going to be one summer, and next summer it'll be normal again. And cross your fingers. So deal with it. Yeah, they'll be in great shape. They're going to be a lot of these guys are healing now during the pandemic. They've had 2 months to heal. So now they can give it their all in the playoffs. We might see some of the greatest playoffs of all time because they'll be healthy and healthy.
Yeah, it'll be a bit slower and off at the start, maybe with just getting their legs back. But absolutely, I agree with that. They're going to be so healthy. It's going to be a rock'em sock'em playoff for sure.
That's why I hope they don't go straight into playoffs, though. I wouldn't mind seeing every team now get 4 games or something, or just to get their legs going, because
tune up.
You don't want to have to go that hard in the playoffs. Playoff hockey is another level altogether. So if you go in there just cold right now with no sort of camp or no sort of skate, unfortunately, injuries are probably going to happen.
0 to 60 and 3.2, you're going to have a few tires that get blown off.
Exactly.
They could always just condense it into Olympic hockey format too, if they really just wanted to get some playoffs and have someone hoist a cup. Round robin play.
Yeah, the whole options to look at for sure. So I'm glad I don't have to make these decisions. All I know is whatever decisions they make, I'm just going to accept for the sake of having NHL hockey back on.
How much of this do you think is sponsor pushed more than the NHL pushed?
Like it's TV.
That could be
TV rights.
Yeah, because these teams have already.
They're obviously going to lose a lot of. They're obviously going to lose a lot of revenue from fans and stuff like that. So, like, if anybody's going to take a big hit, it might be the owners or even the cities when it comes to the economy of these teams coming in and people coming to watch these games. But, like I said, it's going to be one summer, right? And hockey's so big that they'll make up for this. And, next year, cross your fingers, it'll be back to normal again. But.
So, Smith or Koski, who are you going to run when our playoffs start?
Oh, shit, you're going to ask that question, are you?
Imagine a goalie asking a goalie question. Go figure.
It's about time we get some good content.
I tell you what I've proven tonight. Any idiot can start a podcast, right?
Well, thanks for letting me.
You may have been Exhibit A, Mike.
I know. I am Exhibit A.
B, C, and D right here.
That's right. Yeah. All right. So answer the question there, Bob. Koski or Smith?
This isn't a podcast anymore. This is a fucking trial.
That's right. Yeah, one answer. And then what kind
I feel like I'm hooked up to the polygraph test.
And what kind of leash? Do you give the? What's your thoughts?
I think either way, it's going to be a short leash because of the fact you do have two capable goalies.
Yep.
And I don't think it's a big gamble either way. I'll be honest. I think I start with the veteran, Mike Smith. And what he did in the playoffs last year for Calgary after having actually a fairly shit season, he was the old Mike Smith. And I think there's something about this guy where he gets up for this. Like he feels like he has still something to prove. He knows what it takes. He's got the experience to calm the nerves and stuff. So I think we start with Smith and short leash because Koski's been hot. But that'd be my choice.
This long a time off. If there was anything nagging these guys, like sometimes goalies have a slight groin pull that they're dealing with, that's going to be gone now. There's no excuses anymore.
Oh shit! I think I still got groin pulls from my days of playing.
Yeah, I was gonna say mine acts up frequently as well, and that was 20 years ago. So
Jeez. This is why you don't have goalies on your podcast all the time. My knees. Back in my day, horsehair, right?
Well, the knees give out from carrying teams. That's what happens.
Oh, yeah,
absolutely. My back. Oh, my back.
Oh, there we go.
Spinal.
Oh man.
My back is broken.
Where the hell is this stop stream button here? Wow.
Okay, Michael, you can have your show back.
Yeah. Damn it. I've got nothing. I'm about to talk gardening here right away. Oh man. What amazes me actually, we Mike and I have managed to be able to talk hockey now for like 8 weeks. Twice a week for about 8 weeks. We've still found time to talk about hockey and half the time and Bob has still listened for the most part and helped out with the stats. But we've talked a lot of old hockey, and I was getting at this earlier, is we're lucky as Oilers fans because we've got lots of good old hockey to talk about, and that's still recent history, right? Like the '80s, that's still recent history. It's not like '67 or anything like that, right? Like it's still all right. But like, what are the Canucks? What are they talking about on Canucks Army or whatever? Like remember that time McLean
remember that one year we had Pavel Bure?
Yeah, Pavel Bure, right? Like I mean sorry to all those
don't be sorry, that was great.
But But honestly, we're
Wouldn't it be awesome if stats guy Bob like had to count how many matches it took to light the city on fire there?
Oh, man. just,
Inquiring minds want to know.
oh man. I mean,
I'm not privy to that kind of
yeah.
information.
We're lucky
Come
though
on,
in
Bob.
that regard. We can talk, some old hockey. I look at when I talk to Mike, I look behind him, and you got the Gretzky's and the Messiers. I'm wearing a Messier jersey. Mike's wearing a Coffee jersey, and thankfully we don't have to look at Bob tonight. Just kidding, Bob. Kidding. This is how to.
I'm not that photogenic, so you're fine.
How to win friends, right, and influence people. That's I clearly have not been reading that book.
I actually have another question for Bob. It's because he's so knowledgeable in the league for a lot of years. What is your favorite all-time playoff series?
Oh man, good question, man.
You got to think about that one.
Oh wow, I like it, but
are we talking
for
finals?
me, I think,
or does it matter?
Are we talking what? Sorry,
is it just finals series, or does it matter?
Nope.
What series?
Just all-time playoff series. There's got to be one that really sticks out in your mind from all time.
I'll go with my instinct. There's so many to choose from, and so many that I've seen that I fall in love with, and. Obviously, the first time the Oilers won the Cup, I was 9 years old, and I remember it clearly. I was just thrilled over the moon. And also, I think my big one's got to go with that Oilers-Dallas series in '97 because of the fact that, the whole drama of the big Cujo save against Nieuwendyk and then Marchand scoring. Like, when Cujo I saw that puck squirt loose, and Nieuwendyk dived for it. I was sitting on the couch, and I stood up because I'm like, oh, no, it's going in. And then Cujo made the save, and it knocked the wind out of me. I didn't say a thing. I didn't even cheer. I was just totally silent. I didn't believe what I had just seen. Like, I'm sure, well, why aren't they celebrating? Because that must have gone in. And nothing happened. And I was just sitting down on the arm of my couch trying to regain my senses of what I just seen when Marchand scored. Yep. So I was just getting my bearings back, and then I just stood up and hooted and hollered like I was 14 years old. So that's for that, and then
that was my favorite one too, actually.
For me, I find the best hockey of the playoffs usually comes in the first round anyway, because they're not beat up yet, and they just go at each other, and that that hate. Usually the first game can be a little dry, but by the second, third, fourth game, that hate level just keeps ratcheting up, and it's just a war, and that's my favorite hockey there is. I think by the time teams get to the Stanley Cup, the physicality kind of gets turned down a little bit, because really that war of attrition's taken a toll, and they just don't have the same level.
I'm definitely not disagreeing with you, Dursa. I think you're right. They're fresh, and they're so passionate still, and they're getting their momentum going, and they're trying to, create a trend sort of thing, and they're just caught up in it. And it is unbelievable hockey. But isn't that an example, though, of why the Stanley Cup is the hardest trophy to win? Because that beating you take, especially from the first round on, and you're taking this kind of beating all the way to get in the finals, that it's pure attrition and pure heart that you end up winning that Stanley Cup at the end.
So I think when I think about hockey series, though, it rarely a whole series that is memorable for me. Quite often it's a single game, right? And when I think of one of my favorite games, and Chad's leaving, I get a chance to talk, and Chad just says, "Screw you."
We bored him.
Where's your mute button, Chad?
Yeah. Damn, jerk. All right. That's a single game that you're thinking about with that Dallas Edmonton series, right? Like, it comes down to one game. It's usually almost always whatever it is, a 7-game series where that single game. if I could think of a game that I really loved, and I hate both teams, it's got to be Boston and the Leafs when the Leafs were up 3-1. Oh man, like, is there? I mean, is there ever been? Oh, well, I guess that Vegas complete collapse after a bad penalty call is up there.
Yeah.
But the Leafs, just like Vegas, at least doesn't have that history of, I mean, like, honestly, the bars were, everybody's already like drunk and, they were ready to celebrate the playoff victory. And Boston comes back to tie it up and then to win it in overtime. Oh, I just, as a Leafs fan, that had to be heartbreaking. And as a guy who hates the Leafs, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I cheered when Boston scored in overtime. I laughed.
How could you not?
I laughed. It was more like, a laughter type of cheering too. It was just like I could have done a soundtrack of it, and it would have been the Evil Laugh soundtrack. Anyway, that goes down as one of my favorite games to watch. Which is the one where Lucic? I mean, because Lucic was on that Boston team when they came back.
Yeah.
Which was the one in the lineup where he was that? That wasn't the Toronto series. That was against
Montreal.
Montreal. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was Montreal.
Against Dale Weiss.
Yep.
Yeah. Man.
That was insane.
I mean, that is insane, right? Like, you got to think. After that, I remember thinking the guy had something wrong with him, right? And then, of course, as soon as the Oilers signed him, I'm sitting there defending every action that he's ever done in my life, and then, like, as fans, right? Like, you talk about the being a fan. You sit there and Lucic could be like the scum of the earth, which he is again now that he's playing for Calgary. But if Ken Holland signs him tomorrow, I will find a way to defend that bastard, right? Like to every Flames fan and everything I ever see.
I always thought Lucic back in the day, like when he was in his heyday in the Boston years, I was like, I'd give anything to have that guy on my team. I never hated him at all. I thought he was a warrior.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's no doubt. Yeah, in his heyday, he's he is
Boston Lucic was a pretty effective player.
Oh man, he was a warrior. That guy could score. And
he's a 5-time 20-goal scorer, and he scored 30 goals once. He actually led the Bruins in regular season scoring the year they won the cup.
Yeah, and nobody can say they weren't excited when Lucic signed in Edmonton. What they weren't excited about might have been the term and the dollars, and it turned out to be right. And then the fact that he, I think that the other part is you just didn't expect him to go downhill so damn fast, right? Like in the first season he was there, you still kind of thought, okay, well, nearing the end of his contract, we might be screaming about how bad this is, right?
Yeah, but he was pretty effective the first year. I thought he was
absolutely
effective.
What happened?
He scored 23 goals for 50 points in that first year. Yeah. So we got our money's worth of what we want from a 20-goal scorer. But you're absolutely right, Mike. It was how quickly his game went south. But it's also right around the same time where the game actually just got younger and faster. Like Lucic does not have that kind of skill set in today's game. Like he is a fourth liner. He's a very good fourth liner. The problem is you were paying him first line money, and so you expect more from him. But as a fourth liner, he's still effective. He's just out there hitting to be an intimidating presence. Great. But you're paying him to score 20 goals, not 20 points.
Yeah, and it's like he stopped hitting, but mainly because every time he touched anyone, it was a penalty, and we were getting killed in penalties. Couldn't kill a penalty to save our life, so he had no choice but to stop that part of his game. Once you take that aspect out, I defended him because I'm like, he's not allowed. He's not allowed.
Yeah, it is unbelievable, right? Like
he sort of has the same problem as George Larac. Who wants to fight him?
Yeah, and it's no different than a guy like Zach Kassian.
Well,
You know, Cass is a high energy guy too, but he's targeted constantly. He does anything, it's in the penalty box.
funny, we have the guy that
Yeah.
I think the game has
Lucic,
changed so
More
much
misconduct.
in the last 5 years. Like in the last 5 years, we've seen the game change so much to speed, to youth, and also to a sensitivity. Like you guys are saying, like you can't even touch a guy now without it being a 10-game suspension for something.
Yep.
And it leaves a lot of these players who thrived in the game 6-7 years ago. It leaves them out of his spot almost.
Yeah.
when
I mean,
they,
granted, Lucic did lose a step. Don't get me wrong; he couldn't keep up anymore.
yeah, his speed wasn't there, right? But he did look faster this year. I'll give him that. I thought he looked. I thought he looked better, or it could be just that the Flames aren't as fast as the Oilers are. Maybe it's.
I knew that was.
Yeah, maybe it's an optical illusion. So you know what was interesting is we had Anthony Peluso playing in Bakersfield this year, but he was on a minor league contract, so he couldn't come up and play for the Oilers. But he's the guy that fought Lucic for the Flames when he was on the Flames. They called him up, and he dropped the gloves with Lucic. If you look it up, and Peluso did all right. I mean, he's a career minor leaguer that you know, if we were in the old days, he'd probably get 20 games a year. We're not in the old days, so he's lucky if he sees one, and so he gets you know, called into you know, on a minor league contract now. I don't think he's got
Anthony Peluso has played 148 games over a 6-year career.
Yeah, like, but every year these guys see less and less games, right, in the NHL. They used to, I think you'd have a guy like that, like a Peluso, play 20, 30 games a season, right? Like, and he'd play against certain teams,
right? Yeah.
You know, and now, you know, just the fact that he's not signed to a pro contract, he's signed to a minor league contract. I think that's the way the league's going, right? You also, I mean, this contract limitation, right? Like a team like the Oilers, they're usually running it in and around the max contracts, right? That they can have. But would have been kind of cool, I thought, after all of those fisticuffs that they call Peluso up for the for the Battle of Alberta. I thought that would have been kind of neat because the two of them have a history. Do you think
that would have been a heavyweight bout for sure?
I think Nurse wanted to go. I think Nurse was ready to go. I think Nurse would have got you know, had his hands full, obviously, but I think Nurse wanted to go with Lucic. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I see there's the one time they were in the corner there. If you watch that game, that he looked like he was ready to go, and I think Nurse would fight anybody. He might not win that match.
I think he would too, but I don't think he would be picking a fight with Lucic because of hatred. I think he'd just be there to prove a point.
Oh yeah,
Nurse fought Lucic as a rookie, but you know what? They're friends now, so I don't know.
Not when you get out on the ice. Not when you get out on the ice.
Maybe, but yeah,
I'd actually give anything to hear what Nurse told Cam Talbot when Smith was standing at center ice.
Oh yeah, the exact words. Yeah.
He definitely gave him directions.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was one of, you know, there's just I don't know. I mean, where does everybody stand on this? I mean, hockey, fighting in hockey, obviously, it's still controversial, and it's funny that we bring this up because I got down some bit of a rabbit hole the other day, looking at instances where guys either have passed away from fights in hockey. High school kid got a coma, in a hockey game, got beat, ended up in a coma. Right, guys have received some pretty serious concussions, but I'll be fair, right? Like I watch UFC and MMA because I love pugilism and I love boxing, and I've been in a couple of scraps myself, and for the most part, you walk away and the side of your head might be a little numb. Probably the worst part is not your head but your knuckles, right?
Yep.
And you walk away from that, and I love it. Like I love it as part of the sport. But we're watching all these rewind games right now, and we're watching how tough hockey was. Maybe let's just do a little round table. I'm curious thoughts. We'll start with you, Dursa, because once you let the goalies speak, as we've found out, nobody gets a chance to. So here's what I want to know from everybody: hockey in or fighting in or out, and then just a couple words on what your thoughts are on it. Mike, you go.
Yeah, I like having fighting in the game. I'm part caveman, but I think I think it helps police the game because I don't think even two refs on the ice. Well, I know they don't, or maybe it's deliberate, but they don't see everything that happens. So sometimes I like the ability to settle that score, stand up for a teammate, and take the law into your own hands. I like that part. What actually amazes me, and I don't know about you guys, but over the course of the game, how many guys at the NHL level have actually bought it from a fight? It's amazing how low that number is. I think it might be one, but it's staggering how low it is.
Yeah, no, and I'm not. I think you're probably right. Bob, your thoughts on it?
I think Dursa hit it on the head. I think it's needed. I don't mind the fact they took away the stage fights. Although as much as I used to love the heydays where you knew, they'd actually sell a game because you knew, Probert and Domi round 4 were coming up, right? So that's always kind of cool. But I think now there still has to be consequences for your actions. So if you're running on sticking people, you have to know if there's going to be some consequences. If your star players being run, you have to know there's some consequences. Unfortunately, I think one of the worst rules ever has been the instigator rule. So you kind of have to pick your spots a little bit, and they'll never get rid of the instigator rules. They'll look like a step backwards to the NHL. So that's here to stay. So you got to be smart about it. But yeah, you need to have it in there. You can't have guys just pretend to be men and go hiding. You need some retribution. You need the players to be able to take care of themselves.
Yeah. Okay. Fair. All right. Well, thanks everybody. Just all right, Chad. What's your
This
thoughts,
is our best
Chad? Yeah.
pod so far. Bring guys over just to dunk on them.
That's right. Yeah.
I don't have much to add to what these guys said. They make a lot of sense, and I totally agree. You heard me get angry and been forced me to call in when you had Rip the Ref day there, and my thoughts are very, very, very much the same as you guys. The instigator penalty's got to go. Let the players take care of themselves because the officials aren't doing it. Obviously, you're going to penalize the guys that are going out there and headhunting and doing things that are dumb, and the players are going to do it themselves. So why would you get rid of that? The refs can throw you a penalty, but a guy like, I'll keep using him because he's a little weasel, Kachuk runs around smashing guys and he gets his head knocked off by Zach Kassian. Well, lesson learned. That's the way the game is. It's always the way it's been, and I don't think they should change it. No, not at all.
Yeah, and he didn't. Is it part of that reason that he didn't run Kassian the same way the next game? He didn't seem as likely to kind of line him up in the blind spot, right?
I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that everybody was watching too, so he knew he wasn't going to get away with much.
Yeah, no, you're right there. Here's my thought. I'm kind of two minds. As I said, I love watching a good fight in hockey. Just the same reason I love watching the UFC. Right? This is it's as raw and it's fun to watch. It gets your own personal adrenaline going, and I loved it playing hockey. To be fair, I loved getting into scrums at the net, and I loved all those things that boys will be boys types of events in hockey. I mean, it just kind of added to it and still adds to it even when you play adult hockey, right? Like, a little bit. You can't, obviously, you don't want to take it too seriously, but here's the other side of that is where, the game's so different. What we've been watching when we watch these rewind games and these classic games are guys that legitimately, like guys skating into the boards and they'll give them that little shove to go into the boards. They were water skiing off of everybody. They were like some of the hacks and slashes. I'm surprised there weren't more broken bones, although there were probably way more than they talked about, because I do think that guys played through a lot more back then than they do now. That sort of stuff doesn't happen though anymore because of the way they call the game, because of the way the game is played. There's the what's his name in Washington there, that's heavy hitter.
Tom Wilson.
Tom
Tom Wilson.
I was going to say Chris Wilson. Tom Wilson. There's not a lot of guys like him in the league, right? There's not the Scott Stevens types of guys. There's like we made a big deal out of Cassian in that first round when he hit everything that moved, just like they made a big deal out of the guy in Calgary that they ended up shipping out. He's now playing in Vancouver. Those guys don't exist in large numbers anymore, and so the enforcer and the reason we don't see them coming up very often is not there. I'm just wondering if they took it out altogether, if we'd notice much of a difference, right? It's like, because we watch a number of games where there's no fights at all, right? And so it's more of a curiosity thing, but the part of me that, like, I loved when Nurse was I can't remember who it was, but where he was pummeling him, and Nurse's dad's in the stands, practically like, he's the only one standing, right? He's cheering, like, man, I love that, and my adrenaline.
What was asked, Darnell?
Oh man, and I'm cheering and I'm yelling at the screen, and a quick way to wake me up when I'm watching a hockey game is to see a good fight, right? Like,
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. But at the same time, I don't know. There's not much of them anymore. If they got rid of it, it's like I've said before, there's a few things in this game they could get rid of, and I might yell for a little bit, and then later on I would totally forget about it and just watch hockey, because the skill level.
I got a question for you guys.
Yeah.
Do you think one of the reasons why we have some of these bigger injuries now is because we don't have as much fighting? Like, guys are now driving guys on the boards. They're making these dirty hits here and there, throwing their elbows and their shoulders into people's heads, because nobody's really going to do anything about it. Because if you jump in and fight the guy, you get extra 2 minutes and the game and what have you. Do you think we'd actually see an increase in violence if we didn't have fighting at all?
I'll take that one first.
I think the stick work gets ratcheted up a lot.
Yeah. Mike, I'll let you go right after here, but my feeling on it is I don't think we do. I think that I don't think there are more incidents now than there were then. I think more is made out of guys not playing while hurt. I think back in the 80s, if you were hurt, you better, I don't swear a lot, but you better fucking get on the ice, right, and play, because that's why you're here, right? And we all know that. We're all of that age. They told us that in minor hockey, right? In fact, I had a coach in minor hockey tell me, if my leg's not broken and I don't skate to the bench, I'm going to be sitting on the bench for the rest of the game, right? And now, if your leg's broken and you skate to the bench, then everybody's up in arms on why did you make them skate to the bench, right? And that same thing goes for the NHL. So I don't think that I think a lot has been made of injuries. I watch these old time games, and I think those guys were far worse than what we're seeing today. I just think that.
Okay, hang on, Mike. I'm not comparing the game. I'm not comparing the game to the 80s. I'm not saying would the violence go up.
But I don't think
comparable to the 80s or the 70s. I'm asking if the violence would go up from
today,
5 years ago, like, sort of thing. Like the game has calmed down that way a bit when it comes to the fighting. Fighting has gone down, right?
Yeah.
Stick swinging back in the 70s and 60s was insane. I'm not saying go back up to that, but do you honestly think if they've been playing in the 80s or the 70s, when Giordano plowed the McDavid into the net, somebody would have tuned him in?
Well,
we don't do that now.
Here's my answer to that.
And Giordano, the fact of the matter is, Giordano didn't get his ass beat, and then he tried to do it again.
Yeah,
he would never done it the second time.
Here's my answer to that, though. Like, I'm not. Like I keep saying, I love fighting in hockey, so I'm not trying to argue this. But NBA, they protect their stars. The NHL does a piss poor job of doing that. And if they would do that, then
Agreed.
that shit would not happen, right? And so you can get away with that in the NHL because it's I don't know if they don't get it, but there's no like in the NBA, if somebody hits LeBron, the guys don't all go chase after that guy, right? What happens is that guy gets tossed out because it's LeBron, right? Like you have to protect the stars, and that's the part that we're missing from our game. Anyway, I said I'd let other people
Agreed.
talk. I'm going to do that now. I'm shutting up. I'm putting
I
myself
I
on mute.
I think you know what, if there was a guy for the Oilers and Dallas and Ottawa that just hung up the skates for good in Ales Hemsky, and when he played, Robin Regeer would run him and run him and run him, and I believe Ales Hemsky also played with George Larac. So having one of the probably top 4 Oilers enforcers ever on the team didn't stop Robin Regeer from doing what he did to Hemmer. So I don't know if the fighting totally stops dirty play, but I think if there isn't that fighting at all, then I think your stick work and cheap shots is going to get ratcheted up. There isn't a lot of fights now in the NHL, but there's still that deterrent of it could happen. If you totally get rid of that, I don't know. I don't like that idea. To me, I like the pack mentality of having fighting in the game and having the ability to do more than just the game itself to protect your teammates and yourself. To me, that's deep. To me personally, that's deeply rooted in the soul of the game.
Two things. I do agree, or I don't agree with the Regeer comment because the difference between with George, and I love George, and a guy like Semenko is Robin Regeer wouldn't have got off the ice. He'd have been laying there after he was cheap shot and Hemsky. Semenko would come off the bench.
Right. George was pretty gentlemanly. I agree with that.
So Robin Regeer never got the ass beating that he should have, is what I'm saying from George, right? He wasn't the same kind of enforcer as a guy like Semenko, or even Cassian for that matter. George was the kind of guy who played hockey. When he dropped him, he destroyed you, but he wasn't that guy. And to go with the injuries, Michael, and why, in my opinion, why they focus on injuries so much more now is the investment in the player is a lot higher now than it used to be. When you're paying guys $10, $15 million a year to play on your team, any injury is going to be a liability to your investment.
I think teams look at players too as that long-term part of it instead of the game tomorrow.
Yeah.
There's a story. It's a flame story. But I went on a tour, a behind the scenes tour of the Saddle Dome a number of years ago. And we were, got up and over the scoreboard, up into the press box, and did all those things into the players' dressing room. And this story came up talking to their PR guy, and he said they was talking about what they do for the players now, which is they have cooking lessons and they have all of these different things, and pretty much every team's the same now. I think that as you're a young player, they want to teach you proper nutrition, they want to teach you all of those things. The story as it goes in Calgary was they didn't have any of that, and I think it was Harley Hotchkiss was walking in in down below. And Dion Phaneuf came in, and that he had a big contract right out of junior. And Dion Phaneuf came in carrying a bag of McDonald's. And Hotchkiss flipped out and said, like, I'm spending this much money for this guy to be eating McDonald's. And within the next week or so, everybody had chefs and everything else and nutrition consultants. And so, it just comes to mind only because you're right. Like, these guys they're a commodity, right? They're a product. Yeah. They are, they're paying good money. As an owner, you are paying really good money to have these players, right? And as a league,
Yeah,
you want them to be around as long as possible, right?
absolutely. A guy like McDavid, if he gets an injury, sure, he will play through it. There's no question. The team's not going to let him because no way. We have 10 more years or 20 more, 12 more years of Connor McDavid. We're not going to ruin that on one possible career-ending injury that he plays on.
Yeah, I think they had, we all saw the documentary. I think they had to hold him back in preseason because he wanted to play them all. He's got that fire.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, so,
it's phenomenal.
Yeah.
As a fun fact here, I just went online here and I saw that the stats for this last year so far, Connor McDavid is 7th in the league for penalties drawn.
Who's number one?
Warren Fogle is right there with him. So talk about guys not protecting their players. Timo Meyer is actually ahead of Connor McDavid.
Doesn't that scream to you guys?
Yeah, we have, of course, we got Rip the Ref on Monday nights, and it's funny because the CCRHL says we're going to call it referee-free Thursdays now. Brett's a hell of a guy. Love having Brett on here. I don't even remember where I was going with it. Oh yeah, he's talking about like you could be blowing the whistle every time Connor gets the puck. And my counter argument to that is, well, if you do the first couple times, then people are going to stop that shit. I think, I hope, and I just don't get it. This is something that fans have been arguing for a while now, which is protect the stars. I've not heard anybody say don't. Maybe the Flames, maybe the Flames, right? But I think everybody else in the league, is saying like protect the star players. Oh man.
100%.
Well, they put the instruction rules in so that it would show off the skill set of the players. So, and when they first came in and started calling that, they were calling everything, and it was kind of boring. But then guys adjusted to it. They said, okay, well, we can't do that. But now all of a sudden, it's our star players. Like I see this happen not just to Connor McDavid. Obviously, I see it more to Connor McDavid, and I notice it more because he's my boy. But you see it happen to Nathan McKinnon. You see it happen to Johnny Gaudreau. Like you do see it happen to these guys too. Mark Scheifele, like they're getting held up all the time. Patterson and Vancouver's get held up all the time. So they're not letting the skill shine through like they were supposed to. So they need to get back to maybe having another year where it is all the shitty call everything you see until guys adjust again. Because our skill players, how many still photos do you see of Connor McDavid, and he's the only Oiler in the frame surrounded by 4 Flames or 5 Flyers or something like that? Like, it's ridiculous. The only way they can stop him is by obstructing him. I don't blame them for doing it. It is the only way you can stop him. Until it gets called regularly, they're just going to keep doing it.
Patterson, by the way, is so small, a little breath of wind, and it's you could be calling obstruction, right? Yeah. And the first sign of another hockey player, and Johnny Gaudreau is gone, so no worries there. Oh, gotta love that. Gotta have those in there, right?
Well, we can all agree that Nathan McKinnon's up there with the stars. That's for sure.
McKinnon is he is sweet to watch, isn't he?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I respect a great hockey player. In fact, as much as I make fun of Gaudreau, the guy's got some sick skills with the puck. Like he's a hell of a hell of a.
Let's not get carried away.
Yeah, let's not get carried away. I'm not a huge fan of the player, but
Are you finished?
Nathan McKinnon, yeah. Nathan McKinnon, unbelievable. Another guy that's in our neck of the woods, Joe Thornton. There's another guy I love watching play. Like that guy can pass, Ganny.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and we may, sad part. I don't know that we're going to see him play much longer, and it's too bad. If at all. And now he's got no beard, so I don't know if the magic's gone.
Be faster now.
or maybe he's revitalized. Maybe
Streamline.
streamlined. Yeah, but
Aerodynamic.
there are, like, we talk about this league and the stars in the league. We're at a time where there are some legitimate stars, right? Like they're always that's the way it always is, but every team has a good player right now. Like I don't know if you could I hate to use the word parity, but there are there's a good player on every team right now, and somebody that's fun to watch. Some teams have, a few less, or I wouldn't. Ottawa is struggling to, I guess, have a franchise sort of star, but Pajot, had a hell of a year, I guess.
Thomas Chabot.
Yes.
Let's is it 10:30 already? Goalies.
Somewhere.
This is what happens, Dursa, when we let the goalies run the show here.
I don't know.
Here, we got you guys on right now.
That's a weird way. That's a weird way of saying thank you.
Yeah. Is for you guys, is Carey Price the best goalie in the league right now?
Ooh. Me? I don't think so. No.
No. Okay.
No.
Marc-Andre Fleury.
All right.
Yeah, Fleury's right up there for me. He's getting older, but he still has tons of talent and tons of go get him. So he's a good goaltender. It's tough right now for me for the best in the league. I don't know. What do you think, Bob?
I don't think Carey Price is the best in the league.
No.
I will say he's my favorite in the league. Like I'm a big Carey Price fan, and there was definitely a time where he was the dominant guy. Ah, man, the best in the league. Sweepers.
I don't see enough of Vasilevsky.
I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, Vasilevsky's up there.
What's that? Sorry, Mike.
Vasilevsky.
I don't see enough of.
Yeah, of course he's up there.
We don't see enough of Vasilevsky to really know what he is.
I think he belongs in the talk for the best for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that.
What about Rask?
I mean, I know it's easy to look towards the best team in the league and say, well, of course they put up good numbers because they play on such a great team. But sometimes being on a great team makes it that much more difficult to be a good goalie. There's also more pressure on you, and so you got to keep coming through.
Yeah, I look at what Fleury did for Vegas and continues to do for them, and you can't look by that guy ever. He's just a phenom.
Fleury's a phenom, but I'm going to say this too, and this is unpopular now because people are giving Pittsburgh shit for trading Fleury and keeping Murray. But I guarantee you, any other GM would have done the same thing because you look at the number one, the age difference.
Yeah.
Murray was an up-and-comer. Murray had already shown what it takes to win a cup. Right?
He won them a
and
cup.
was there?
He traded him.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, let's critique.
I know, but you're at the point where you had to choose between the two. You're gonna get. You were at that time. You're gonna get more years out of Murray. Murray had already won a cup with them, being a number one in a playoff race, and so. I think any GM would have done that. Yeah, in hindsight, it looks like a bad trade because Murray hasn't come through. But at that time, all things pointed to Murray being the future for the Pittsburgh. So I don't think Fleury played so good in Vegas because he was trying to prove it was the wrong thing to Pittsburgh. I think he's just proving that he's still a legit number one goalie.
He just got in a groove and wrote it.
Yeah. It's like going to
boy
Vegas.
When he gets in a groove. Is there anybody more fun to watch besides Jonathan Quick? Maybe
Yeah, I agree.
I don't even think Jonathan Quick's close to that.
What?
No, but it's for fun to watch.
Fleury's just athletic and he's a damn good goalie when he's on.
Oh, Bob, I got a question for you.
Oh boy. Oh man.
Give me your thoughts on Dominic Hasek.
Oh.
Sorry, what was that again?
So give me your thoughts on Dominic Hasek.
Okay. Hasek was amazing. I was never a fan of Hasek the person because I think he's a whiny baby and all that sort of crap. And a lot of his antics were just Like if you touched him, he went flying into the upper blues like he just got shot by a sniper or whatever. So, and him throwing the blocker and all this kind of crap, that's all garbage. But as a goalie, what made Hasek incredible, and he definitely goes down as one of the greatest of all time. There's no, whether you want to think about it or not, what makes him so good is that he never did the same thing twice. Like he was so unpredictable. So like a player's not going to do, a player doesn't know what Hasek's going to do because Hasek doesn't know what he's going to do. He's just going to throw whatever he can in front of the puck. And there's a great picture I saw because he always got accused of being flopping and just making snow angels and hope for the best. I saw a great picture in Sports Illustrated one time when he was still at Buffalo, and he's on his back, his head towards the pointed up the ice, so his feet are basically in the net. He's got his feet up, and but you see his eyes in the picture. So his forehead is up the ice, but his eyes are still on the puck. Like
Yep.
He's so focused. He was still looking at the puck in this most unorthodox position you could ever see. And like it was incredible. He has one of the best focus of all time. He was so unpredictable, and like he was amazing, and he was so much fun to watch.
Absolutely. My sentiments exactly.
All right, question for both of you. Where do you put him with Brodeur?
Man, I shouldn't have called in if you're going to ask all these stupid questions.
Well, I mean, I think Hasek has his place up there. Numbers say that Brodeur obviously was the better goaltender, but I mean, I don't know. I think if you ask Marty about Hasek, he'd be saying the exact same thing that Bob just said. And teams hated playing him. Marty was a little more predictable, but he is a fighter. And Hasek, yeah, I think I put him right up there. That was a great time period of goaltenders. I have to say that the Brodeur, the Haseks, the Cujos, the
Beezer.
Like it was. What was that?
I said even Beezer played back then. Van
Yeah.
Beesbrook.
Yeah. It's like such a great era of goaltenders back then. It was so much fun. But I mean, Marty he had a great long career and he had a ton of wins and he has the cups to prove it. And I don't know. I mean,
Guy Bear, probably one of the best.
Anaheim.
Guy Bear, the only guy to ever.
I don't know. Your thoughts. Go ahead, Bob.
Well, he's no Darren Pupa, but
no.
I gotta say, it's tough to compare. Like if personally, in my opinion, which counts for shit overall, but I'm gonna give it anyways. Brodeur is the top 3 goalie in the history of the NHL. Hasek to me is the top 5 goalie in the NHL. So I give Brodeur a bit of an edge. But that when you're a top 3 or top 5 in the history of the NHL, like what really is the difference between the two? Like you're basically an equal, right? So I would give Brodeur a slight edge personally, but there's not much to differentiating between the two.
I brought up Van Beesbrook, by the way. What's funny, I just looked up the goaltending standings for 93-94. And 58 games played for Hasek that year, a 1.95 goals against average, and a .930 save percentage. But second to him,
that's all right.
Second to him was 57 games played. Was Van Beesbrook with a .924 save percentage, and then Patrick Waugh, Mike Lenarduzzi, who played one game. Sorry, I will take him out of there. Martin Brodeur. And then if we're going, let's say, maximum sort of games played, Curtis Joseph that year played 71 games for St. Louis, had a .911 save percentage. I think
that's amazing.
That to me, that's unbelievable, right? Like, yeah, we talk about Curtis Joseph. Another name here.
Quick question for you, Mike.
Yeah.
Quick question for you, Mike. Mike Lenarduzzi, was that he played for Hartford? Is that correct?
That is correct. Wow, good memory.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah, so he played one game. He had a 2.83 goals against average. There you go. So who else was there? Here's a guy played a game for Edmonton. Shows up with a .914. Wayne Cowley. Do you remember him?
Oh, Cow.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Oh man, that was actually quite the year. Felix Potvin was there. Mike Richter. That's a good name.
Yep.
Richter was a hell of a goalie. Sean Burke was playing for Hartford that year.
Was
Eddie
Rudy playing then too?
Belfour was playing. Ranford, Pupa, Arturs
Yeah.
Urbe. Arturs Urbe was playing. Oh man, the list on here actually is a who's who of goaltenders of the '90s. Pokey Reddick was
Pokey.
Pokey played a
Pokey,
couple games.
Pokey and the Bandits.
Yep.
Yeah. Who else we got? Craig Billington, Soderstrom. I remember all these guys. Byron Defoe, Garth Snow played 5 games for Quebec that year. Frank Pietrangelo in Hartford. Looks like Hartford had a few goalies play that year. Glenn Healy backed up Richter in New York. Glenn Healy was there.
In New York,
Yeah, Tim Chevelday.
Beezer and Richter were teammates at one point.
Who was? Here's a good question. Don't look it up, Bob. Who was Hossik's backup in Buffalo?
Grand Fear.
Yeah, isn't that awesome? Grant Fear. Grant Fear backed up Dominic Hosik. Like, at
He
the
also,
time, do you even think about that? Like, Trevor Kidd was playing in Calgary. Kidd had a good junior career. Rick Tabaracci, Freddie Brathwaite.
I used to watch a lot of Lethbridge Hurricane games back when Trevor Kidd was in the dub, and they bragged him up.
Played for Brandon.
And they would, almost like Coming to America, put rose petals out in front of his feet when he walked when he was in junior. And Jamie McLennan in Lethbridge, I thought was actually a better goalie, but just not as highly touted. And I think Jamie ended up having a better NHL career.
Yeah, it was those. Just look up the stats for the goalie stats for that 93-94. It's quite interesting. And you're right, Rudy was playing in LA that year.
Yeah.
He ended up playing 64 games with an 897. Rudy was fun to watch, though. Wasn't
Yeah, he was.
Yeah. Like, I mean, he's not going to be Hall of Fame for goaltending. But he's certainly memorable, like one of the most memorable goalies, and he always made it interesting, right? Like he's one of those guys that, he's just on the cusp, right?
Do you know what I miss about the goalies of the '90s? And Bob talked about this last time we did the podcast about emulating styles. Back in those days, every goalie you just mentioned, I could literally see their specific personality style in my head. Every single name that you put out there was crazy. Every goalie was different. They had Eddie the Eagle, you had Potvin, you had Cujo, and all these guys. And that's not – I can't tell goalies apart anymore, really. Like they're all seem to be seasoned to play a certain way of goaltending.
Pretty robotic.
Yeah.
You nailed it on the head. I've been preaching this for a long time. We've lost some of the individuality in goaltending.
Yeah, Rudy
like
was
the names you mentioned.
Like Rudy, you could pick him out of anywhere. That guy's got to be Rudy for sure. That goofy bandana he wore, and
the bandana, Coho helmet.
Yeah,
for a goalie.
And the way he held his glove.
Yep. Oh yeah.
And I think like all the names you mentioned, like the '90s were a great time for goalies, especially for the individualism and stuff. You didn't see that. Like in the '50s, you all had no masks on, so you could tell them all apart. And then when they started getting these fiberglass masks with their paint jobs, you could tell them apart. But now everybody's wearing the same equipment and they're playing the same style. Like Marty Brodeur was the last kind of throwback where you could tell who he was no matter what equipment he would have been wearing. It's just the way he played. But now everybody plays the same.
Absolutely,
they're all taught the same.
From the other.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not as much personality.
No, the personality's gone. But they've learned, and they all go to the same clinics and all the same coaches.
But it's what they need to do. Yeah. That's how they get in NHL. That's how they're affecting NHL. I can't blame them for doing that. Yeah. Like that's the way the game is now. And who knows, as the game keeps evolving, and it always does, you might see that come back because it'll have to come back in some way. But it's just the time we're in right now. Right now, it's all about the speed. It's all about the Connor McDavids and the Austin Matthews and that sort of thing, which is great. That's exciting. Yeah. It's fun to watch. And so the only way you can play against them is you just got to be in position, hope for the best almost.
So
we're gonna, 6'7".
Yeah, and 6'7". That's right. We got a couple minutes left here. In fact, we're gonna wind it down. But here's here's my last question for you, because we got both goalies on, and this is something I'll probably never recreate again on the podcast. So, just kidding.
Yeah, we'll do it on Monday.
Yeah. No, you know what, guys? I've had a lot of fun, and actually, we should just do this again. Just have the four of us, because it's been a lot of fun. But here's the thing. I'm curious about. We've got we have got two goalies on here. If you could make one change from a goaltender level, right, to the game to increase scoring, would it be smaller pads, bigger nets, more space behind the net? Would it be, anything? Like, what would be your thought on a change you'd make to the game?
Who do you want to go first?
You go ahead, Chad.
Yeah, smaller pads, definitely.
Smaller pads.
I mean, the equipment's gotten a lot different than when we played, and even in those goalies in the 90s, they had good equipment too, but it's just gotten so much bigger because the player sticks and the players' abilities have gotten so much better that, I don't know. I think smaller pads is going to be a big thing for going forward.
Yeah, I agree with you. Bob, your thoughts?
You don't change the aesthetics of the game. So the net's been the same size for eons, so that's got to stay. When I first heard about them making bigger nets, I'm like, that's atrocious.
Yeah.
They've already done the space behind the net thing. They've already moved the nets up, so you've tried that. You put the trapezoid in to keep the goalies from playing it. I actually think scoring might go up if you allow the goalies to play it. I at least allowed a goal per game from my over puck playing, or a goal per year from over puck playing.
Mike Smith.
But for me it's the net. For me it's the equipment. Start off small if you have to. Take away the cheater on the glove. Like, you take away any aspect of equipment that's designed to stop the puck and not for protection, and then you'll get somewhere. Like, you don't want to take away the protection. So, if the leg pads are thicker, not necessarily wider but thicker, I'm all for it. But like the cheater in the glove, that's designed specifically to stop the puck, not for protection. So start with that and then work from there.
Yeah. Good call. Dursley, you don't get a say.
Terrific.
No, you'd get a say.
Plus, it doesn't matter how small the equipment gets, Dursley, you're not scoring anyways.
Oh, jeez. Wow, the goalies are fighting.
Let's not talk about my dating life, okay?
I don't want to know how small that equipment is.
Oh, jeez. Wow. It's getting late.
I'm not answering that. That sounded like a come on.
It's getting late.
For me, the one thing that I'd like to see is get rid of the trapezoid. I think that's kind of silly. Let the goalies go anywhere, play the puck if they want. But if they come out of their crease, make them fair game.
I completely agree with you.
Yeah.
On making.
So do I, and I'm a goalie, and I agree with that. Yeah, I mean, I came at the puck. I came at the net to play the puck all the time, knowing I wouldn't get hit. And if I got hit, I would get the penalty. You definitely think twice of playing the puck if you're going to get drilled.
Yeah. It's Marty Turco would play the puck because he'd hit you back.
We've got CCRHL says double the trapezoid. Yeah, those goalies don't know what they're doing out there anyway. So yeah, so we've got definitely the trapezoid. I think personally we should get rid of the goalies altogether, turn the nets around, and play posts. So that's
with me and that. It was just as good as not having a goalie at all.
I'm gonna just get rid of them off the show.
That's right. We will start with just off the show. No, guys, thanks. I had a lot of fun tonight, laughed a lot, and we got to talk some hockey, which is always fun. Whether or not all 5 people show up to listen or not, it's still great. Thanks, Mom. Thanks, Dad. Thanks, Grandpa. Yeah.
My dad and my sister were watching today.
There you go. So if not for family, we'd be no. You know what? It was great, guys. A lot of fun. Let's do this again. Let's plan to do this another Thursday. We've been talking about having. We've got Rip the Ref on Monday. We're maybe have an hour of Run the Goalie on Thursdays. We could get the two of you on. Would be a lot of fun.
You bet.
Yeah, we're gonna call it a night. There's one of these days, Mike, you'll actually get to talk more than 10% of the time, and it'll be because my mic is broken. But any last words tonight?
I'm just looking forward to hopefully getting George on Monday, and we touched on it a little bit tonight, and Monday's going to be probably a little bit hard, but hopefully it's not. George might want to talk about some other stuff other than the meat, but that's I'm looking forward to that, and thanks to Chad and Bob for stepping in here tonight, because we sort of had guests planned and that kind of just went awry, and that's the nature of this high-end show sometimes, but here we go.
Yeah.
It's always a blast, and I'm honored to be here, guys.
Awesome. Thanks. And thanks, Bob.
Yeah.
Anytime.
I'm listening anyway, so I have no problem calling in.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. And that's it, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. This is Michael from Oilers Live. Everybody have a great night. Stay healthy. Stay out of trouble.